Hello, and welcome. This is going to be part of, I believe, a three-part series I'm going to work on. I'm breaking them apart simply because there's a lot to cover, and I want a good stopping point for each video that I create in case something goes wrong and I have to redo it. But what this tutorial is going to cover today is, well, this part is going to begin with changing your computer BIOS settings and making sure that your computer can boot from a USB drive, so that when we get into the USB drive, trying to boot from a flash disk or a USB drive, you'll be able to know if your computer is capable and how to make the changes so that it can automatically boot from that device first. A lot of computer manufacturers lock out the ability and companies lock out the ability to boot from USBs in the BIOS just to protect the computer. And so this is another reason that when you want to boot from the flash drive, you need to be capable of looking in the BIOS and making sure the settings are changed. And another reason I'm recommending to go straight into the BIOS rather than just change the boot order through like a hotkey like an F12 is so that you can actually see if your computer does support the USB drive and see if the computer BIOS does see it. Because if your computer BIOS does not see it and is not capable of supporting that, then you're not going to be able to boot from it, and this will save you some time. Another reason I'm making this video is because we sell flash USB sticks with Ubuntu on them on our website at www.sickcomputerdoctors.com. And we've had some people lately that would like to purchase them but then don't quite know what to do with them when they get them. So, and this is kind of a series meant to help them more than anything else, but if it can help somebody else, that's fine as well. The second part of our series is going to actually be able to set up VMWare. The version I'm going to be using for this is 8 because it doesn't support booting from flash, to actually boot from USB. And there's a nice little tool called Plop, and that allows you, it kind of puts a pause in the whole boot process so that you can connect your USB drive to your virtual machine and boot to USB. And the third part of this series will actually be looking at the different options that this USB flash stick, after booting from it, looking at the actual options the USB stick provides, installing Linux, just a quick overview of the standard procedure, and then lastly, just walking through some of the features of Ubuntu, and perhaps this will end up even be a like 3-4 part series. So let's go ahead and get started, shall we? I'm going to power on this machine to, well, first I'm going to actually plug in my USB drive, and you guys will be able to hear it as being installed because you'll hear the doo-doo. Okay. Note that when I plug this device into my computer, it sees it, and it even shows that it's an install Ubuntu flash drive. Okay. If I open this folder to view the files, it has the contents of a typical flash drive that Ubuntu would have. Okay. Okay. So now that we know that the USB flash is installed, we are going to connect to, before we get started with that, and the reason that somebody may want to boot to a flash drive, there's a ton of reasons why, but right now with Windows end of life, you may be looking at alternative operating systems and want to try an operating system out before wiping out your Windows and just going from scratch. This will give you the perfect opportunity because it does allow you to run the operating system from USB. Secondly, it allows you to install the operating system from USB instead of playing around with a whole bunch of CDs, DVDs, or perhaps your device doesn't even have a CD or DVD-ROM in it. Many of the newer, thinner computers that are power energy star, whatever that is, do not come with DVD drives because the DVD drives, one, make the slimline factor of a machine not so thin, and two, unless of course it's internal built-in like MacBook Pros, but then you have the factor of if they go bad you can't really replace them unless you dissect the whole machine. But anyway, kind of getting a little bit off track. I apologize for that. But the main reason you'd want a USB to be able to boot from USB is so you can run an additional operating system, you can recover data, you can recreate your partitions, you can recover passwords. I mean, there's just a whole list of reasons why you'd want to be able to boot from USB. And more specifically, the reason you'd want to be able to boot from a USB Ubuntu stick is because, oh, and even perhaps your DVD CD-ROM failed, and a lot of the newer Ubuntu disks actually require DVDs. So if you only have an internal CD-ROM and you need a DVD-ROM and you don't have one, you can just use a USB instead. Use USB stick instead. Okay, so let's get started and boot into the internal BIOS. This is a little bit different than anybody is really going to see on their computer. If you're using an actual physical box, if you power onto the BIOS on your computer, you'll have like a hotkey. It might be Escape, F1, F2, or even a series of keys like Shift F1 or F2 or Shift Escape. VM makes it real easy. They just allow you to power straight onto BIOS. Okay, I am going to go ahead and connect my removable device. You'll notice that it is disconnected from the device. So I'm going to, if this were connected to the device, it would say disconnect instead of connect. So I'm going to connect to the device. And this is the option that the plop software actually does. It kind of puts a pause in the boot up source, in the boot up process, so that you can actually connect your USB device and then choose to boot from that device, because it uses, I think, kind of looks like a version of damn small Linux to actually mount the drive inside Linux and then go from there. Okay, so here we go. Here we are in the main window. We just arrow over to the boot tab, and well, these aren't really tabs because it's not really an interface like that, but back in DOS days, this is the closest thing you'd have to a tab. And as you can see here, we have removable devices, hard drive, CD-ROM, CD-ROM drive, network boot, and from the actual network card. I want to expand both removable devices and hard drive, and the reason I'm doing that is because when you have a USB flash drive attached to a computer, depending upon the device itself, it can show up under either of these areas. So when you're looking to boot from a device, you're going to want to look to see if it's a removable device or under the hard drive. As you notice here, my USB flash drive is not even being seen because VMware doesn't support booting from flash drives. So if I wanted to move any of these devices up or down, first of all, I know it's not supported, and that's the most important factor, because if you're trying to troubleshoot booting from a flash drive and you can't figure out what's wrong, you go into the BIOS and you can see, well, it's not seeing my flash drive, it must not be supported. It also may have an option for EFI or even USB emulation. Sometimes if the USB emulation is on, that may cause a problem as well. But if you come in here and you see that the USB drive is not there, then you're going to want to Google your computer Google it and see if your computer is even capable of booting from the flash drive, and if there are any steps that can be taken, such as updating your BIOS in order to make it bootable. There are some older BIOSes that the first version of them did not support booting to USB, and there were additional BIOSes that came out thereafter that did support booting from USB, but with a few minor tweaks in the BIOS. Okay, so here we see that my device is not bootable. If I wanted to move any of these up or down, I want to move this legacy drive down. The removable device is down. So I'm going to click on it, go up to get onto, to highlight it, and then I'm going to do the minus button. As you'll notice, it moves up and down. If I want to move it back up, plus sign. If I wanted to move the hard drives up or down, minus, plus to go back up. If I wanted to move the CD-ROM drive, I could do the same thing. So I'm going to get out of here and I'm not going to save my changes because I really haven't made any changes. And then I'm going to boot into the other menu that allows you to directly reference the booting order in case, and some people like to use that window instead, that option instead. I prefer to go into the BIOS first to see what's really going on with the flash drive, because if it's not available in the BIOS, it's not going to be bootable through the boot order menu that I'm going to show you in a second. Okay, so we're going to exit out of here, and this is going to happen very quickly, so I'm going to quit talking for a second once I do this, because I have to hit escape once, and only once, or else I'm not going to be able to pull up the window. See? That went by too quickly. So now I have to boot back into the BIOS again. And the reason I'm booting back into the BIOS again is because it gives me a little bit more of a pause than just trying to boot it straight into the Ubuntu operating system that's on it. So let me try this one more time, and then I'll exit it. And okay. There. Okay, that is the boot menu, where you can choose the order of what you'd like to boot from. Even though it has removable devices available, you'll notice that, again, there's no option to see which removable device can be booted from, because there are no removable devices. But it's not really that friendly, and it doesn't show you exactly what the problem is. But in the BIOS, you can see the problem. So if I wanted to boot to, say, the removable device, the hard drive, whatever, I can move it up, I move it down the same way that I did before. Minus, plus, or you could just, I'm sorry, this one is not reorderable. Some of them actually are. Some of them you can modify the boot order on the fly. This one is, in particular, is not modifiable that way. So if you want to boot from a particular device, you just have to arrow down to it to highlight it and hit enter. Okay? So that is how you would normally boot to a USB flash drive if it were available, and how you could check to see if it were an available option in your BIOS. I hope this has been helpful, and I hope you continue on to the next set in the series, because the next one is going to cover the actual setup of your VMware machine to boot to a USB flash drive. Thank you.